Lonnie, we meet again, and we are in our blues today.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure, Dr. M. Always a
Yeah.
pleasure.
Good morning to you in El Paso, Texas, and it's 14th Thursday here, but it is 10 p.m. You can hear Phantom. That's Phantom. So let me, I have to do this. I need to tell my viewers, they know you, all right, but Lonnie Wilson. Change agent, are you weird enough? Yeah, that's a real hit. People have been logging on to that quite often to find out whether they are weird enough, and they check up on the index, where do they stand? I have not checked with them where do they stand at this point of time. Change agent, are you weird enough? There we go. You're on the 27th episode of series 1 of supporting and sustaining continuous improvement. And we're going to talk about the evolution of lean manufacturing. Sounds romantic. I don't know what Darwin would be doing, but then I'm sure he will understand you. So here you are, principal consultant, owner of Quality Consultants, 32 years, Chevron. We have spoken a lot about your work in Chevron, so much so that I think you're the only person who has written about lean refining when I come to those books. And a chemical engineer, El Paso. Yeah, this is your latest, which I got, and it is a really amazing book. Here you are. I just did a fast read. I got both of them. There you go. Enlarging footprints. Science of workforce engagement was really good. I did a quick read of it. Honestly, I've not studied it, and I need to study it. But then, how many books are you thinking of writing, Lonnie?
I don't know. As I'm kind of transitioning into retirement, that's one of the things I want to do more of. And I started writing in 2009. That was my first book. I actually started it in 2007. And I've been writing pretty much continuously since then. But the last couple of years with COVID and being more locked in my office, I've had a chance to write a book in 2019, and then another one in 2021 and 2022. And I'm starting on my next book right now, and it's about awareness, about how to improve your awareness, things like Gemba walks and reflection. And I call it the gateway quality to improvement. In other words, you can't fix anything until you become aware of it and aware of ways to fix it. So that's my next endeavor, and I'm doing some research, and I've just started to outline the book actually this week. So any luck at all, in 4 or 5 months, I'll have that out, and maybe I'll get 2 books published this year, which would be remarkable for me. But so how many books do I intend to write? I don't know.
6
I think as long as it's fun and I enjoy it, I'll continue to do it.
Okay, so when do you think you're going to autograph one by one, and every page that you write, you can keep couriering it to me, or the small size single piece flow, one book at a time, or you want to do?
Yeah,
I'll leave it to you. I'm still holding you for that on an autograph book from you. Okay, you're probably the only person who has written a book on lean refining, right?
yeah. Yes, as a matter of fact, I am. I was contacted by the Moscow Petroleum Institute, which is an interesting organization. In the United States, we have what's called the American Petroleum Institute, but it's primarily for business contacts and things like that. But the Moscow Petroleum Institute is also the educational entity for petroleum engineers and engineers who are going to go in refining. And I got in extended talks with them about the book because, quite frankly, they said they couldn't find another book on the market.
Mm,
And I don't know of any other.
mm,
And it was a very, very fun book to write because it was one book where I could really compile the 20 years of experience that I had with Chevron.
mm.
And that was a fun trip down memory lane, so to speak. But yeah, lean would work in the petroleum refinery, it'd work in the oil fields. We did an awful lot of things when I was with Chevron that were lean oriented, and it's a great application in refining.
In any case, I think two of your books are the study materials in the colleges and institution as a study book, and you have refined that with the science of the book that you wrote right now.
Yeah,
It's the science of workforce engagement. So that is probably a supplement to sustaining workforce engagement.
yeah, it is. It's sustaining workforce engagement and how to implement lean manufacturing are what I call the bookends to lean manufacturing.
Mhm.
Lean manufacturing is all about continuous improvement, which is the theme of your podcast, your vodcast. And respect for people is the other part of the culture of Toyota. Toyota defined those very nicely in their book. They call it the Toyota Way, 2001. It's not the textbook called the Toyota Way. It's a little green pamphlet. It's 14 pages long, and it's a description of their culture. But at any rate, their culture contains two pillars: continuous improvement and respect for people. And lean manufacturing really addresses the continuous improvement pillar thoroughly. And it introduces the respect for people pillar. On the other hand, sustaining workforce engagement focuses on the respect for people pillar and intersects to the culture, the continuous improvement pillar. So the two of them provide the bookends. And I like to say, now we're filling in the bookshelf. And enlarging your problem solving footprint is how to get more people engaged in the work in problem solving, principally the rank and file workers. And the science of workforce engagement is to take sustaining workforce engagement and reduce it to a smaller book that more addresses applications. Not nearly as much background in the theory. The sustaining workforce engagement has a tremendous amount of research into it. And you'll find all of the big names in engagement and their research referenced in there. Drs. Desi and Dr. Ryan and Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, along with William Kahn and the people from the Utrecht engagement group. All of their, I shouldn't say all of their, but their key findings and publications are referenced in there somewhere and tied together in what I would like to think is a much simpler language, so that managers can apply it, can understand it, and apply it more simply. If you read what these scientists have to say, it's fabulous. It's absolutely fabulous stuff. But every bit of it is a very hard read. You really have to concentrate. You really have to focus. And I don't find very many managers who have the patience to do that. And so to a great extent, what sustaining workforce engagement is an interpretation of the science, so they can apply it to their workplace and to take the complex terms and put them into simple, understandable language.
Great, and thanks to you a lot for all this contribution to us. And let's talk about the de-evolution of lean manufacturing. So you're on, you know where you are, you're on Dr. M's vodcast, and vodcast was not coined by me. It is podcast plus video, it made it vodcast, so just bear up with me. And I'm going to stop sharing the screen. Over to you, Lonnie.
Okay, I have the screen.
Yes, sir.
Dr. M, your focus is on continuous improvement.
Yes, sir.
And that's a significant pillar to the Toyota production system, and hence lean manufacturing by extension.
Mm.
And so as we continuously improve, how do you go about doing it?
Mm.
Okay. I want to talk today about one aspect of it that has gotten absolutely totally confused
Mm.
by what we have done here in the United States.
Mm.
It was never intended this way as Ono and Toyota developed the Toyota production system, but it came to be in the United States for a variety of good and bad reasons.
Mm.
And that is, how do you continuously improve? Okay. The Toyota production system is based on the total elimination of waste.
Mm.
Okay. Well, for some things we'll talk about today, so much of what has been advertised as lean manufacturing, or even advertised as the Toyota production system, is the improvement of value, value-added activities, add value to your product.
Mm.
And when it comes to the manufacturing level, that has created a confusion that has literally caused lean to go backwards.
Mm.
And that's why I come up with the term, the de-evolution of lean.
Mm.
Now, this concept is not the only one that is causing this de-evolution of lean manufacturing. And it's not the largest one, to be honest with you, but it's a significant one.
Mm.
And you can get on LinkedIn just about every day and you can read some discussions about value-added activity. And they're the most perverse discussions you can imagine. There are discussions by people who really do not understand what lean manufacturing is. Okay. Now I'll talk a little bit, and I want to make one point here. I make a clear distinction between lean manufacturing. A manufacturing plant is taking raw materials and transforming them into assemblies and selling them to somebody else. Taking all the parts to a radio, putting it together, and selling it to General Motors. That's what Delphi does, for example. Now that's different than lean applications at what I call the enterprise level, where you're dealing with the end customer and you're talking about, what features do you want in your car? Do you want leather seats, or do you want fabric seats? Do you want high density forward lighting, or is regular density forward lighting adequate? Do you want an engine that has 350 horsepower, or is 200 horsepower adequate? Those are the things that are addressed at what I call the enterprise level, okay, where the product supplier is discussing the features and the qualities that they want in their products, okay? But you'll find out as we go through this, those things are long since been determined and categorized by the time they get to the manufacturing level. Okay, so I'm focusing on lean manufacturing, and there's a reason I focus on lean manufacturing, and that's because when the Toyota production system was popularized, and most of the stuff that was written about the Toyota production system, they were talking about production. They weren't talking about design. They weren't talking about finance. They weren't talking about supply chain management. They were talking about manufacturing. Okay. And we'll go into that in more detail as we get going, but I want to make that point.
Yeah,
this is about lean manufacturing.
So if I understand you right, what you're going to talk about is, in the process, the material comes in, whatever conversion takes place, and the product goes out. That is the process that we're going to talk. Am I right?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And it can be a tier 1 manufacturer sending product directly to the automobile supplier, a tier 2 manufacturer making fabric so the tier 1 can make seats so they can send them to the automobile plant, or a tier 3 or a tier 4. It doesn't matter what tier you're in. It's precisely what you described. Raw materials coming in, a process that turns it into a sub-assembly or a finished product. Okay. Okay. So that said, let's get going. Oops. Okay, there we go. Oops.
Yep.
In the 80s, Toyota, a famous Japanese author, Mondin, Taiichi Ono, some very influential people, Robert Dock Hall, Schonberger, and others taught us about the Toyota production system. The Toyota production system. Okay. And they taught us by studying it and working in it and watching it and all kinds of things. Okay. Now, amongst all of these people, all of those people I've mentioned there, they're just intellectual giants. But the key document was Ono's book. Taiichi Ono was the architect of the Toyota production system. He was their chief engineer in their production facilities. Okay. And his key book was called The Toyota Production System Beyond Large Scale Production. Okay. And it was published by Productivity Press. And at that time, Productivity Press was owned by my friend
Norman Bodek.
Pardon?
Norman Bodek.
Yes, Norman Bodek. And he made, I don't know how many trips to Japan, but he took Ono's original book, which was written in 1978, and Norman had a translator that worked for him. His name was David Liu, and David translated that book into English, and it was published in 1988. Okay, so other people had written about the Toyota production system, Schonberger and Hall principally, and Mondin, before Ono's book came out. But Ono was there. He orchestrated it. He designed it. He lived through it. He taught the people how to do it. So for my money, Ono is the go-to person when you want to understand what the Toyota production system is, and his book is the go-to reference. If something disagrees with Ono's book, I say it's wrong. It's as simple as that. He's the go-to guy and the go-to reference. Okay. In the 90s, the book, The Machine That Changed the World, came out. Okay. And it was based on the 5-year study that was done at MIT, sponsored by the American automobile industry, to determine what are the Japanese doing this so good? Why are we losing market share to them? They wanted to understand about the Japanese. And this book, The Machine That Changed the World, came out about it. And the machine was the Toyota production system. Okay. Now, our understanding of all of these technical details, okay. Now, you might notice that up till this point, not one thing has been taught, has been published by Toyota. Well, there was one thing, but we didn't know about it. Okay. But Toyota published 2 things later. One was called the Green Book. And this Green Book is this little 14-page pamphlet I was telling you about called The Toyota Way 2001. And it was published in 2001. Okay. That was the first document that Toyota published specifically to describe Toyota. Okay. And they called it the Green Book. Okay. They had another book called the Gray Book. And the Gray Book was the Toyota Handbook. And we'll get into the Gray Book in a minute. Okay. But the problem is, since those things have been published, people are continually and consistently and repeatedly deviating significant from the original concept of lean manufacturing. Okay. Lean manufacturing was designed to be a complete and pure replication of the Toyota production system. So to understand what lean manufacturing is, we have to understand what the Toyota production system is. Okay. These deviations continue and are validated by the same compendium of people who caused the deviation. They're fueling their own fire. For the most part, there's a whole bunch of consultants, and I hate to say that because that's my job, but a bunch of academics. And the principal problem with the academics is very few of these academics, if any, ever practiced the Toyota production system. They studied it. They read about it. They watched it from the outside, but they didn't get down into the middle of it and actually use the Toyota production system. And hence they missed some significant pieces of all of those people. And there's some really incredible and intelligent academics. I like to say that what they said was not wrong. It was just incomplete. Just incomplete. Okay. And as such, our understanding and our application of lean principles are not growing and evolving. Okay. Rather, they're morphing and de-evolving.
Mm.
Okay. Instead of getting closer to the Toyota production system, we're getting further away.
Mm.
And you see it every week in LinkedIn. You can find somebody who's writing about the failures of lean manufacturing. Okay. Well, people who have tried lean manufacturing are failing. There's no question about that.
Mm.
But here is my point. There is absolutely nothing that I have found or that anybody has ever showed me that's fundamentally wrong about lean manufacturing. Okay. Any good skill, whatever it happens to be, can be done poorly. Okay. And that's what's happening. They're doing it poorly, but they're doing it poorly with the help of a lot of powerful people. Okay. So let's talk about how we go from the Toyota production system being a replicate, excuse me, lean manufacturing being a replicate of the Toyota production system. Okay. The machine that changed the world came out in 1991. And that had a profound impact. Okay. And that catalyzed the implementation of lean like nothing before. Okay. And my favorite consultant, and actually one of my favorite people, is Dr. W. Edwards Deming. I took classes from him. I talked to him on several occasions. At one time, I got his contract from him. Someday we got to talk about that. That was an interesting document. But he is the genius behind what we need to do in terms of changing manufacturing. And every year he gets more credibility, but he could not get much traction. Okay. Whereas what the Lean Enterprise Institute did and what the machine that changed the world did was catalyze this huge influx of lean knowledge and implementation. Okay. And popularized how important the Toyota production system was. Okay. Now, in this book, The Machine That Changed the World, we find the following quotes. And this is an extract from the book. It says, lean production, a term coined by IMVP. IMVP was this organization at MIT that did this 5-year multi-million-dollar study. A term coined by IMVP researcher John Krafcek is lean because it uses less of everything compared with mass production. Half the human effort in the factory, half the manufacturing space, half the investment in tools, half the engineering hours to develop a new product in half the time. Also, it requires keeping far less than half the needed inventory on site, results in many fewer defects, and produces a greater and ever-growing variety of products. Okay, so he called it lean production. Okay, and there is where the word lean manufacturing came from. Okay. The second quote was, after World War II, AGI Toyota and Taiichi Ono at the Toyota Motor Company in Japan pioneered the concept of lean production. Okay. And Taiichi Ono was at the manufacturing plant. Here we're talking about manufacturing. Okay. So we go from the Toyota production system to lean manufacturing, and the link is made and documented very nicely in the book, The Machine That Changed the World. Okay. Now, relative to all of this stuff, here is my position. Okay. Remember, I told you the problem is we start out with eliminating waste, and all of a sudden in the United States, we keep talking about adding value. Well, let me tell you what my position is on that. Okay. We have deviated significantly from the original concept of lean manufacturing. That is a replication of the Toyota production system. As such, we are not very successful at creating lean cultures. Okay. I have cataloged 17 such major deviations from basic TPS principles. 17. We're going to talk about one of them today, but I've cataloged 17. Okay. And here I want to focus on just one aspect, the one that has caused the greatest number of problems. That is many experts are still teaching that lean manufacturing is a value-adding process.
Mm,
It is not.
mm,
It is simply not a value-adding process. Okay. And we'll discuss that more fully.
mm,
Okay. So that's my position.
mm,
Okay. So let's talk about this deleterious shift
mm,
that's part of the basis of the Toyota production system.
mm,
Okay. In Toyota,
Mm.
they advertise that the Toyota production system, the basis is the total elimination of waste. Okay. And we've gone from that to creating value.
mm,
That's the shift that we have made. And
Mm.
that shift creates huge problems in the world of manufacturing.
mm,
It actually makes implementing the lean manufacturing system in manufacturing
mm,
functionally impossible.
mm,
Okay. So what is the Toyota production system? To understand lean manufacturing, we got to understand the Toyota production system.
mm,
Okay. So in the words of its creator, Taiichi Ono,
mm,
he said the basis of the Toyota production system is the absolute elimination of waste.
mm,
That comes from page 4 of his book. That's right up front.
mm,
He says cost reduction is the goal.
mm,
Cost reduction, not value addition is the goal. Cost reduction is the goal.
mm,
And then he made this statement, which almost everybody completely misses.
mm,
He says, after World War II,
mm,
our main concern was how to produce high quality goods. After 1955, however, okay, however means things have changed.
mm,
Okay, the question became how to make the exact quantity needed.
mm.
Exact quantity needed. You might recognize that as just in time.
Mm. Just hold on for
Getting the
my,
right quantity to the right place in the right condition at the right time.
yeah, just hold you, just for my understanding. So after World War II till 1955, the emphasis or the entire thrust, which was proven, was a high quality. Ah, that's it. And once they were assured that they could produce or manufacture high quality, then the focus shifted to the exact quantity. Am I getting you right?
Yes, you're exactly right.
Mm,
And that's how the term just in time came about.
mm,
And that's where the concepts of lead time came about.
mm,
Okay. Oops, pardon me. And so Ono was saying, from 1945, the end of World War II, to 1955,
mm,
we focused highly on quality. We
Mm.
wanted to get good quality products out to our customers.
That's 10 years.
And after 55, we
Mm,
said, hey, we've got good quality.
mm,
Now we need to focus on the right quantity. Okay. And that's where the concept of batch busting came about.
mm,
That's where SMED technology came around, so you could make smaller batches.
mm,
Okay. That's where one-piece flow came from.
mm,
That's why you don't use large assembly lines, you use small cells.
mm,
All of that came about because we're trying to make the exact quantity. We're trying to make one piece at a time and do it just in time, on time.
mm,
Okay. And this is when they started talking about the exact quantity needed, that's when they started placing a lot of emphasis on inventory.
mm,
Okay. And it's interesting to note, long before the machine that changed the world came out,
mm,
APICS,
mm,
the American Productivity and Inventory Control Society,
mm,
were huge fans of the Toyota production system, and they published just in time and inventory reduction.
mm,
Okay. But they too could not get a great deal of traction. The people who got the traction were this group from MIT that came out and published The Machine That Changed the World and started the Lean Enterprise Institute. They got everybody's attention, pardon me.
mm.
However, they did some very wrong things after that. Okay. But if we took this together, we could write a definition such as the TPS is a production system, which is a quantity control system
Mm.
based on a foundation of quality, whose goal is cost reductions,
Mm.
and the means to reduce the cost is the
Mm.
absolute elimination of waste.
1 minute. Can I read this so that taken together, we could then write a definition as the Toyota production system is a production system which is a quantity controlled system based on foundation of quality whose goal is cost reduction, and the means to reduce cost is the absolute elimination of waste. Thereby, what you said earlier is the foundation of quality was already made, and then it was the elimination of waste to control the quantity.
Yeah, and here's a point that most people miss. They talk about Ono's book describing the Toyota production system. But if you read Ono's book, there is very little in his book about quality. Clearly, he talks about defects as being a waste, but he doesn't talk about how you improve quality. He doesn't talk about concepts like statistical process control. He doesn't talk about problem-solving methodologies. He doesn't talk about concepts like process capability, CP and CPK. He doesn't talk about statistical process control. He doesn't talk about any of the typical issues that you study when you study quality control. Why? Because they already had it. They didn't need to worry about it. Okay. So people pick up Ono's book and they say, okay, we're going to take Ono's book, we're going to copy it, and we're going to become a Toyota production system. But then they find out they've got tons of quality problems. Okay. So the basis, their foundation of quality doesn't exist as it existed for Ono when they started on this venture in 55. And 55 is kind of, I don't know how he documented that, but that's his quote. Okay. And so that's one of the reasons why a lot of people fail. They try to implement quality control without first having, they try to implement quantity control without having a foundation of quality. Okay. And so, it doesn't work. Okay. So here at Quality Consultants, we teach that lean is none of that. Lean is a broader topic. And by lean, I don't mean lean manufacturing. I mean lean in the general sense. It could be lean production. It could be lean sales. It could be lean education. It could be lean finance. Okay. Or it could be lean vodcast production, whatever it happens to be. Lean is the creation of a culture of continuous improvement, your hallmark, Dr. M, and respect for people. That's what lean is all about. That's what Toyota as a company at the business level is all about. And you can read all about this in their booklet, The Toyota Way, 2001. It's tough to get a copy of that. It's not published anywhere that you have to get a copy from somebody at Toyota. And I got a friend of mine to send me one, but I know lots of people who look for them and can't find it. It's certainly not on Amazon. Okay. And then we teach that the means to lean, how you accomplish lean, is number one, you problem solve your way to the ideal state. We talk a lot about that in my book about expanding your problem solving footprint.
Yes.
And the thing that makes lean is through the total elimination of waste. That's how you get to the ideal state. You get rid of the waste using a fully engaged workforce. Okay. And so here you can see the continuous improvement pillar here and the respect for people pillar here. Okay. So lean is all about removing waste. Okay. Let's move on. Okay. Now in Ono's book, he had a graphic, and in just a minute, I'll show you the graphic from his book in Japanese. And luckily I had my friend Michel Baudin had already translated it. I certainly couldn't read the Japanese.
mm,
But this is Ono's vision of waste and value, okay? And he only talked about value in one sense,
mm, mm,
and that's in the value of worker motions.
mm,
He didn't talk about, for example, he talks about transportation being waste,
mm,
but he doesn't say all the forklifts you got are are waste materials. He doesn't say that. Okay. Here he's talking about worker motions. Okay.
mm,
And so we're going to turn this into a pie chart. And his first subdivision was he said there's all worker motions, and we divided into two things: waste and necessary work.
mm,
Okay.
mm,
Okay. Now he further divides that,
mm,
and he says of the necessary work,
mm,
there's two categories.
mm,
There's waste,
mm,
and he called it type 2 waste, and value added work. Okay. So in this graphic, he's showing that the vast majority of all worker motions, only a small chunk of it is value added.
mm,
And I've done, I don't know how many value stream maps and how many analyses. And I find out that the value added work compared to all the work is usually way less than 5%. And the value added time compared to the total time to produce is usually less than 1%. It's just filled with waste. Okay. Now, some of the waste is necessary. Okay. It's necessary under the current conditions. Okay. Well, for example, he lists transportation. I live in El Paso. I've got several clients across the border in Mexico, tier 1 suppliers to Detroit. Well, they get their product by shipping it to Detroit. That's transportation. That's a waste. But it's also necessary because the Toyota plant is not next door to the manufacturer here in Mexico. They can't take the parts and put them on a conveyor and convey them, from one manufacturing facility to the next. They have to take them, and first thing they have to do is they have to box them up. So there's all of this problem with packaging and labeling and palletizing and shrink wrapping. All of that is waste. And then they take that pallet and they load it on a truck, and all of that effort to do that is waste. And then they drive the truck to Detroit. All of that is waste. And then in Detroit, they have to undo everything. They take all the pallets and recycle them, and they do away with all the shrink wrap, and they take the boxes and throw them away, and all of that is wasted. But under the current conditions, it's necessary. Okay. So sometimes that's the best you can do. You never get rid of all the waste. Okay? But at any rate, what he says is there's type 1 waste, there's type 2 waste, which is necessary under the current conditions, and then there's value added work. Now you can, in fact, reduce all of those. Okay. And as you do that, you reduce all the worker motions. Okay. So there's all kinds of discussions about value added and waste. Most of them are not very productive. Okay. Some more about waste. In Ono's book, the graphic was not translated properly. I want to show you. And almost nobody noticed it. When I talk to people about it, I cannot find one person. Well, one person, Michelle Baudin, also noticed it. Okay. But here's Ono's pie chart. Okay. When the book was translated into English in 1988 by Norman Bodek and his company, this is what they published. Okay. And you can see the waste, the net work, the non-value added work, value added work. Okay. Worker movements instead of motions, movements. Okay. It all looks good until you look at this piece. If you look at that piece, you find out that value added work is non-value added work. And it's incorrect. This portion here was translated improperly. And instead of saying value added work, it should have said necessary. Okay, necessary.
Yeah, I just hold it there. That is necessary at the present condition, right?
Yes,
Yes.
necessary at the present conditions. Exactly.
Mm.
Okay. Now, how do I know that's translated improperly? My friend Michelle showed me this. This is the original pie chart from his original book. Okay, with one exception. And that is the annotations are by Michelle, the English. Okay. And so what he says right here is this is work that does not add value, but is necessary under current conditions. Michelle lived in Japan for several years. I think he's a French national, to be honest with you, but he lives here in the States now. He lives in just outside of Palo Alto, and he's fluent in Japanese. He spent, I don't know, 10 years in Japan, I think, but he's fluent in Japanese. So he translated this. And in Ono's book, he said, this is necessary under the current conditions. And that's what he said here. This is work. Okay. And it got translated improperly when it was translated into English. Okay. Also, if you notice in Japanese, these Japanese writings very often are written in almost cartoon-like characters. I think they call it manga. Not positive, I think that's the term. Okay. But that was his book. That was in his original book. Okay. So if people aren't arguing that and noticing that, they really don't understand value from value added. They just, skim by the book. Okay. So how do we remove waste, or do we create value? Okay. Well, the two wastes, I use the mnemonic 2-dime. Transportation T, waiting, W, O, overproduction, defects, inventory movements, excess processing. Okay, that's the way I remember the 7. If I didn't remember 2-dime, I'd forget. Okay. But Ono's position was not to create value. He said in his book to raise the ratio of value added work. We must be concerned with non-value added movements, that is, the total elimination of waste. Okay, I can find no reference, not one, where Ono professes that is the function of the TPS to create value. Not in, he's written 3 books, not in any of them can I find it. Well, I'm not sure he wrote the other 2, but they've got his name down there. For example, one book was published, I don't know, 20 years after his death. So possibly he wrote it beforehand and somebody posted it later. I'm not sure how that worked, but okay. But here's what much of current thinking is. Much of current thinking is regarding lean manufacture is they're being taught to increase the value. Now, Ono did not say increase the value. He said raise the ratio of value added work. So value added divided by total. And total is value added plus non-value added. So if you shrink this, the ratio is going to improve. And that's what he wanted people to do. There's a very influential book, very popular book, national bestseller amongst lean geeks, called Lean Thinking. And in it, they posture that the 5 steps of lean thinking are specify the value, identify the value stream, make value flow, let the customer pull value, and pursue perfection. Okay. Now, for my money, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's fine. If you're talking about how an entire business interacts with an entire customer.
Mm,
But if in that business you're talking about manufacturing, this is pure nonsense.
mm. You're making a differentiation between the enterprise approach and the manufacturing approach that you define, that material comes in and the product goes out.
Exactly.
Mm,
Exactly.
mm,
So as we go to create value or reduce waste,
mm,
some more things from Toyota themselves. Okay.
mm,
Toyota was one of the first automobile factories to focus almost exclusively on auto assembly.
mm,
Okay. Back in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s,
mm,
at Ford and at General Motors
mm,
and at Chrysler, they would make everything that went into the car.
mm,
They would make the seats, they would make the steering wheels, they would make the dashboards, they would make the radios, they would make the whatever it was. They had engines and transmissions, and they would manufacture. Well, not completely all of it,
mm,
but back in the 60s,
mm,
somebody did a study and they showed that at Toyota,
mm,
of the total value in the car,
mm,
less than 30% was added at the automobile plant.
mm,
More than 70% came to the plant in the form of sub-assemblies.
mm, mm,
Instead of making the seats at their factory, they had the seats come in. Instead of making the radios, they had the radios come in.
mm,
Instead of making the instrument panel, they had the instrument panel built and sent to them.
mm,
Okay. So they were assembling cars.
mm,
At Toyota, it was 30% value added at the facility,
mm,
70%
mm,
come from the cooperating firms.
mm,
In General Motors, it was just the other way around.
mm,
30% came from the cooperating firms,
mm,
70% was added at the assembly plant.
mm,
Okay. That was a huge change. And Toyota was smart. They said, we're going to become experts at putting automobiles together.
mm,
We're not going to become experts in radios,
mm,
and we're not going to become experts in lighting, and we're not going to become experts in suspension systems.
mm,
We're not going to become experts in those. It takes too much effort.
mm,
What we want to do is we want to focus on what we can do and we do well.
mm,
Okay. Well, it soon came to pass
mm,
that Toyota's problems were not at the assembly plant, but with the cooperating firms.
mm, mm,
So starting in the 60s, they started doing what we would call supply chain management by going to their cooperating firms and teaching them
mm,
how Toyota did things.
mm,
Okay. First, they started out with just a pamphlet, some papers, and a 3-ring binder. And they matured it, and it grew, and it developed. And finally, they published a thing called the Toyota Handbook.
mm,
Okay. And the Toyota Handbook came out in 1973.
mm,
Okay. And you can get it on the internet right now.
mm,
Okay. My friend Mark Warren
mm,
had it translated from Japanese into English.
mm,
And he had that done, I don't know, maybe I got my copy from him maybe 5 years ago.
mm,
But it's on the internet and you can get it.
mm,
That is the first document
mm,
that Toyota published about Toyota.
mm.
And they describe their Toyota production system. When you read it, it's amazing. Okay.
Those who are meant as a guidelines for the cooperating firms, right?
Yes.
Mm,
Yes. But what's in this little book? Okay. Does it reveal the intent of the Toyota production system?
mm,
Remember, this book was published in 73. It was written and kind of evolved from 1960 forward.
Oh, I see. Oh, I see. Mm,
The opening paragraph,
mm,
I'm sure what happened is they started the Toyota support system.
Mm.
And somebody said, okay, let's go to this plant. Well, what should we teach them? Well, here's what we should teach them. And somebody compiled it and put it in a 3-ring binder or something. They went to the plant and they taught them and they worked with them. And then they said, oh gosh, they need to know this and they need to know this. And they changed it and morphed it. And pretty soon they created this handbook some 10 or 15 years later.
mhm,
But the opening paragraph in chapter 1, section 1, first thing you read,
mm,
the basic idea of the Toyota production system is a sequence of operations with the objective of improving productivity by removing unnecessary, unreasonable, and uneven activities that decrease our production costs. Okay. You and I talk about waste, but in Japan, these were the three terms of muda, mura, and mori. Waste, unreasonableness, and unevenness. Okay. Now, we don't talk about them in that way, but that's what they're talking about. They're talking about removing waste. They want to get rid of unnecessary activities that decrease our production cost. Reduction in cost is the objective.
So
That's the whole idea behind the Toyota production system. The first book on the Toyota production system. They call it the gray book because it's got a gray cover, I guess. Okay. And the intent could not be more clear. Decreasing our production costs through waste removal. Or you could say the removal of unnecessary, uneven, and wasteful activities. Okay. You'll see some things written in the literature. You don't see it very often anymore, but back in the 90s, you used to see it frequently. They would call it the 3 M's. Okay. Mura, muri, and mura. Okay. In this book, there are no references to creating value. No references whatsoever. There's the same discussion about improving the proportion of the value added work through waste reduction. It's the same thing. Okay. This book was later used by the Japanese Management Association. Okay. It was translated to English and published as a book. Okay. Now, this book is an absolute jewel that if you're a lean geek, if you're a Toyota fan, this should be on your bookshelf. It's pure gold. And I ran across it absolutely by happenstance. Okay. That's the book right there. It's called Kanban, Just in Time in Toyota. Okay. And it's a horrible title. Okay. But this was one of the books, one of the early books that Norman Bodek brought to the United States. And at that time, in the 80s, Kanban was getting a lot of press through Apex. And that's why it's titled that way. Now, there is some stuff in there in Kanban. Kanban is one chapter. But they talk about sequencing operations, minimizing batch sizes, all kinds of lean thinking. Okay. And why the title is that? I only bought it out of curiosity. And when I bought it, I said, holy mackerel, what a jewel, you know. But that was one of the early books that brought over. You'll notice down here, I don't know if you can read it, but it says translated by David Liu. That was Ono's go-to guy in terms of translation. And he does a good job. It reads very much like somebody who's well-versed in lean. Okay. So that book, you can get it. It's on Amazon. I think you can get a Kindle book even. Okay. So a little bit more about reducing waste or creating value. What did the CEO of Toyota said? Okay. In 1977, long before the machine that came out, before any of Ono's books, there was a very popular peer-reviewed article, which was widely published, describing the Toyota production system. Okay. Now, the significance of this is twofold. Number one, it's one of the earliest publications describing the Toyota production system by somebody from Toyota. Okay. It wasn't written by Mondon or some other college professor who observed it. It was written by a guy within Toyota. The second thing was, it was not just some guy. It was Fujio Cho, who later became the chairman of the board. of Toyota.
Mm.
I mean, you don't get any higher.
Mm.
Some people say, well, Ono was just an engineer. Fujio Cho was the chairman,
Mm.
and he was the representative director of Toyota Motor Corporation.
Mm.
Okay? You don't get any higher than that.
Mm.
Yeah. Next is the emperor, I guess, you know.
Hmm.
And the content of this 73 book is totally reflected in this article.
Mm.
It's a great article. You can get it on the internet,
Mm.
and it's called The Basic. And in this article, he says the basic concept of the TPS is cost cutting through the elimination of waste.
Mm.
Could not be more clear.
Mm.
Ono's saying the same thing. Cho's saying the same thing.
Mm.
The Toyota Handbook is saying the same thing.
Mm.
Okay. The only thing who is not saying the same thing is the American audience of academics and consultants who are saying something different.
Mm.
Okay. Okay. So some more interesting little tidbits here.
Mm.
To check the emphasis,
Mm.
I did a word search
Mm.
on Ono's book.
Mm.
On Ono's book, Toyota Production System versus Lean Thinking by Womack and Jones.
Mm.
Okay.
Mm.
Now, this doesn't prove anything, but I find it very interesting.
Mm.
Okay. And so I searched for the word waste.
Mm.
In Ono's book, the
Mm.
word waste is cited 131 times.
Mm.
In Lean Thinking, it's cited 49.
Mm.
Now, this doesn't take into account the fact that Lean Thinking is twice the length
Mm.
of Ono's book.
Mm.
Okay. So Ono talks about waste an awful lot.
Mm.
Lean Thinking talks about waste less.
Mm.
Okay. In Ono's book, the word value
Mm.
is cited 49 times, and in every case, he's talking about these worker motions.
Mm.
In Lean Thinking, the word value is cited 537 times,
Mm.
more than 10 times as much you
Mm.
hear value. Okay. And here's the real nut cruncher.
Mm.
In Ono's book,
Mm.
creating value or adding value is cited 0 times.
Mm.
In Lean Thinking, 48 times.
Mm.
Once every 5 pages,
Mm.
they're talking about adding value or creating value.
Mm.
So you can see the difference in emphasis between Ono,
Mm.
who built, lived, and worked with the Toyota production system,
Mm.
and Womack and Jones, who observed the
Mm.
Toyota production system.
Mm.
A complete different emphasis.
Mm.
Okay. Now that has done an awful lot to change the thinking in the United States.
Mm.
Okay. And so let's get back to manufacturing for just a minute.
Mm.
Okay. What can and what should manufacturers do? Okay.
Mm.
What did Duran say about manufacturing?
Mm.
Now here's a couple of things
Mm.
that are from a broad sense are very relevant.
Mm.
Most manufacturing firms have 3 constituencies.
Mm.
They have the stockholders,
Mm.
the customers,
Mm.
and the employees.
Mm.
You might want to say they have management too, but management's employees.
Mm.
Okay. The customer wants high quality products delivered in the right quantity at the right time, delivered just in time.
Mm.
So the manufacturing mandates
Mm.
for the customers,
Mm.
by the customers, are quality and on-time delivery.
Mm.
That's what customers want. The price has already been determined in
Mm.
most cases.
Mm.
Okay. Or set by the market.
Mm.
The stockholders want a decent return,
Mm.
which quickly becomes a function of profitability.
Mm.
And the manufacturing contribution then,
Mm.
after quality and delivery,
Mm.
is reduced costs.
Mm.
There's nothing else you're going to do. If the price is set,
Mm.
how do you improve the profit? You reduce the cost.
Mm.
Okay. The employees want a good place to work.
Mm.
And the mandate there is to be able for the employer to create good morale,
Mm.
which means having high levels of employee engagement.
Mm.
So these are the things that the 3 constituencies are working for.
Mm. Mm.
For the most part, manufacturing function is
Mm.
that they transform raw materials into finished goods.
Mm.
They don't add any new value to the product.
Mm.
Well, there's sometimes there's some things you can do with packaging and labeling and stuff like that, but they're relatively minor. You're not going to change the features on the product. That's a function of the drawings and the contract that you have. Okay. And those things are a function of design and sales. Now, Dr. Duran puts these two elements in perspective. He said we have quality of design, and quality of design is supplying the features customers want and therefore are willing to pay for. If a customer wants a Lexus that has 20 speakers in it, they're willing to pay extra for that compared to somebody who has a Toyota Corolla that has 4 speakers in it. They're willing to pay more because they're getting more. They're willing to pay for leather seats because they like them better than cloth seats. If you get a Lexus, you get a sound system that has, you know, a 200 amp amplifier in it or something. You turn the sound system up on that, you'll break the windows. It's amazing. Okay. But those are things that people are willing to pay for. They're features. Okay. You know, fancy tires and wheels, you know, backup cameras, heated seats, cooled seats, heated steering wheel. All of those are features that people are willing to pay for. Okay. Now, quality of conformance is to supply a defect-free product. And customers are no longer willing to pay for that. They expect that. Okay.
Can I just hold you there just for my understanding?
Yes,
so the
please.
basic value, as I understand it, is in the design stage. After that, it is whatever is that you have specified to the customer, you just conform to that and deliver it to him. Am I right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Now, let me say something, and maybe I should have said this from the very beginning. Lean manufacturing was designed to be for what we call high volume, low variety products. Okay, not specialty products. Okay. Now, let's say, Dr. M, you're going to have a new house built. Okay. And you want them to put in some very special cabinets. Your wife is very particular. You know, she wants the cabinets made out of a certain kind of wood, and she wants a certain motif, and she wants a certain color. And she wants the lights above the cabinets portrayed in a certain way. You will hire a specialty cabinet maker. Okay. Those people usually cannot take advantage of most of the things that have to do with lean manufacturing. Okay. Now, they can take care of a lot of them. Okay. But not all of them. Lean manufacturing was born in the manufacturing of automobiles at Toyota. As you deviate from that, you start to lose some of the power of the Toyota production system. Okay? Because you're not producing automobiles. You're not mass producing them. Okay. You're producing, you know, the cabinet maker is maybe making one at a time. You know? And so there, the quality of design and the quality of conformance is a different thing. Here we're talking about the typical world of mass production. Okay. In terms of specialty production. Now, many of the principles still apply. You should still be using continuous improvement. You should still show respect for people. Okay. But many of the elements of the Toyota production system don't work nearly as well, or certainly they don't work the same if you're in what we call a make to order business instead of a make to stock business. Okay. But as we move on, but yes, you've got it right. The quality of design is determined by the engineers and the salespeople in collaboration with the customer. And the quality of conformance is how you operate your processes to actualize, to manifest that design at the customer's level. Okay. And so quality of design is a value creating function. Okay. And today we call that quality of design value. People are willing to pay more money for it. Okay. They are willing to pay more money for a Lexus because you got 20 speakers instead of 4, and they're willing to pay more because you got heated and cooled seats and heated and cooled steering wheel, and you got a temperature control system that can adjust the temperature to the driver and adjust it to the passenger, and it would be different in the back seat, and you know, lumbar supports and all kinds of features. People are willing to pay for that. That's what people call value.
Mhm.
Okay. Quality of conformance, however, is a completely different thing.
Mhm.
Nobody's willing to pay more, but they say, well, okay, you're going to put round tires on my car versus square tires. Okay, well, I'll pay more for round tires. They expect that quality to be there.
Mhm.
Okay. And somebody said, well, we'll sell you a car and it'll start up 99% of the time, but 1% of the time it won't. But if you want to get a car that will start up 100% of the time, that'll cost you more. Okay. People don't pay for that. They don't pay for that type of quality. The quality of conformance is what you advertise the car to do, and then they expect it to be that way. Okay. And actually, this quality of conformance is really what I call the entrance requirements to get in the business. If you don't have those requirements, pretty soon people don't buy your product because they can buy the same product someplace else and it works all the time. Okay. So what? Let's say we want to call lean as a value-added process. What's wrong with calling lean manufacturing a value-added process? Well, there's a whole lot. Okay. In principle, there's nothing wrong with defining lean as value creation. Well, until you try to do it. Okay.
In a manufacturing plant.
In a manufacturing plant, yes. Okay. Let's say you're a plant manager and the boss comes by and says, hey, Dr. M, we're committed to transforming this facility into a lean facility. That means you need to create more value. And as a plant manager, you say, okay, boss, how do I do that? How do I create more value? And he will be at a loss to tell you. He may be able to help you in terms of reducing the waste, but how do you create more value? So when managers accept value adding as being a key driving precept in the world of lean manufacturing, they create it impossible for their people to perform. And yet all over, you hear people talking about lean. I got in a discussion with a firm the other day on LinkedIn, and a guy said, hey, we're implementing lean in our facility, but I'm having trouble talking to our transportation people because transportation is a waste. And they said, okay, so, we're talking about the total elimination of waste. So that means you want to get rid of me and my forklift. And the manager says, well, no, we really don't want to. He says, well, wait a minute. You want to improve the value added? You want to get rid of the waste? That's the waste. I'm toast, and they don't understand it. And the people get confused and the managers don't know what to do. And for this reason and others, these lean initiatives fail. And they don't fail because lean is a bad theory. Lean is a sound theory. There's nothing wrong with it. They fail because they can't apply the real theory. They misunderstand the theory. They don't know the theory. And consequently, it doesn't get to be successful. I recently read an article that was written a couple of years ago in Forbes magazine. Forbes is a big name magazine. And this guy was writing about lean manufacturing. And his conclusion was he had a case study that they had done and it didn't work. And his conclusion was lean only works in an expanding marketplace. Well, he clearly didn't read Ono's book because Ono was very, very clear about how important it was in the middle 70s when they had the petroleum crisis in the world. And how they really focused in on their lean principles. And they were able to not only survive, but thrive in a shrinking marketplace. Because when the price of gasoline went up, the purchase of cars went down like a rock. So how do you stay competitive in a shrinking marketplace? Okay. Now this was in Forbes magazine. This is not some cheap pulp thing that you pick up at the newsstand. This is a well-respected magazine. But that's what he was saying. It only works. So many people really have a superficial understanding of lean. They understand the jargon and not much else.
Just hold on.
And
And
when
these are the magazine that the CEO reads, right?
pardon me, I didn't understand, Doctor.
Forbes are the magazine that the CEO or the C-suite guys read.
Yes,
And
exactly.
when you publish such a thing, that is what they gets impregnated into their head, right?
Yes. So there's a bunch of CEOs saying, well, my business isn't in an expanding market, so I'm not going to use lean. Okay? You're exactly right. That's a great observation, because it's not only wrong, but it addresses it to a very powerful audience. The very powerful people who can cause lean to be implemented or not.
And they can show the Forbes magazine in a boardroom and not in a Gamba anyway. They
Yes,
can flash it
exactly.
in the boardroom to the directors.
Yeah. And show it to their buddies on the subway on the way home.
These are things that people don't talk about.
Yeah.
They never talk about this. Thank you for bringing that out. Makes a lot of sense to me.
On the other hand, if this plant manager is told, we want you to transform this plant to a lean plant. We want you to improve the ratio of your value-added work. And we expect you to implement a full-blown effort at waste reduction. That plant manager can do.
The key word there,
that.
sorry for this, the key word there is the ratio, right?
Yes.
That is value added divided by the total work. The ratio is what is significant in that.
Yes. And that's what Ono preached. Reduce the waste, improve the value added ratio.
I'd like to dwell on it a little more just for my curiosity. When you say a ratio, now just correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, you are my teacher, you're my mentor, so I have a right to fail. So when you talk about a ratio, either you improve the numerator or you decrease the denominator.
Yes.
What I understand is that Ono said decrease the denominator so that the ratio improves, right?
Correct.
So that's how you improve the value adding ratio. Reduce the denominator. That is eliminating the waste. Am I grasping it?
You're exactly right. Now Ono could have made the ratio the other way around.
Increase the numerator, right?
Yeah, he could have decrease the numerator. Well,
increase the numerator, the value adding.
Well, no, he could have written it this way. He could have written it as total divided by value added.
Is it inverse of that, right?
And then he would have told them to reduce the ratio. He said to increase it because he had value added divided by total. So with this, Ono said to increase it. If it were this way, you'd want to reduce it. So if the value added were 2 and this were 10, okay. In the other case, if this were 2 and that were 10, okay. If you had said it the other way around, you'd want to that's what he wanted you to do, pardon me. If you just said it the other way around, either way, you're reducing the total.
Yep.
But yes, you're exactly right. And there's another thing about the ratio, and that is that the numerator has to be totally contained in the denominator.
Correct.
They can't be different categories. And people make that mistake all the time. Okay, so a plant, pardon me.
Sorry, just because the numerator, that's the value added, is built up in the design stage, right?
Yes.
I'm talking on a broad brush station. I'm sorry for that, just to get that conceptually in.
No, go ahead.
So the value adding is basically what you you told me and what I understood is what the design guys, the sales guys talk to the customer and get that featured in the design stage. And then you have in the manufacturing, the material coming in and delivering it to the customer, what the features they had signed in for, or they understood and asked for, or what do you call that, purchased
Specified.
for, whatever.
Mhm.
Whatever you have advertised, and they said, okay, I want this. And then when it comes to manufacturing, it's the material and the product to the customer, right?
Yes.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Ready to move on?
Sure.
We can come back to this too if you want to. Okay.
It's good for me.
Okay.
Anyway,
So
why I said good for me is this is one of the 16, right? So there are 15 more that I got to get from you. So let me get over this.
okay.
Okay.
Okay, we can do that.
Mm.
So the answer to the question of remove waste or add value, what's wrong with this? Well, it's confusing. It's debilitating, and it won't work. It simply will not work. And it never was the concept of lean manufacturing. The concept of lean manufacturing is waste removal, cost reduction, productivity improvement. Okay. So if you're removing waste, your focus is very important in continuous improvement. How are we going to continually improve? Well, we're going to remove waste. Okay. And this may differ depending on where you are in the organization. But we're talking about the largest application of lean principles, which is in manufacturing. So I just want to remind everybody, we're talking about lean manufacturing. We're not talking about lean enterprise. We're talking about lean manufacturing. We're not talking about lean transportation. We're not talking about lean education. We're not talking about lean in healthcare. Now we could, they all have applications and some of them are just wonderful. Okay? But what we're talking about is lean manufacturing. Okay. And Ono's perspective is clear. Raise the ratio of value-added work. Okay. Total elimination of waste. Joe's perspective is clear. Remember, Joe was the CEO. All Toyota documentation is clear. Okay. Hence, cost reduction through waste removal is the Toyota focus. And it should be the focus of lean manufacturing. And we should work to improve the value ratio, just as Ono said. That's what we should be doing. Okay. And as soon as we do that, lean initiatives will start to be far more successful. But if we keep trying to add value, it confuses the issue. It confuses the issue. Pardon me.
There you go.
Here endeth the discussion. Let me get a couple of credits up here. And one last comment. Okay. And that is that I make a deal with everybody who's a student of mine. Okay?
That's me.
And that is, if you've read one of my books, if you've taken one of my classes, if you've listened to one of my podcasts, if you've been in one of my webinars, if you've been to one of my seminars, if you've listened to me speak at Industry Week or wherever at a conference, you're a student of mine. And once a student of mine, you're always a student of mine.
Yes.
Okay?
And
For that reason, you get the privilege, or maybe the price, I'm not sure, to write and seek advice and call me about anything.
Yeah, call you.
So here's my contact information. Here's my email. There's my phone. Make use of those things.
Yeah, I did. And honestly, I did. When I called you
Oh,
up
yes, you
yesterday,
have.
when I called you up yesterday, and I know the circumstances in which you were, but you picked up my phone and you said, wait for 2 minutes. You had to get out of that particular place. And then you spoke to me for 45 minutes. And I appreciate that because I wasn't testing you out in any case. I mean, I wanted to clarify certain things, and there you are. You picked up my phone and you talked to me, and I understood what you're saying, and you went out from that sensitive place where you were, but you went to the place where you could talk to me, and you kept up this promise that you are assuring all of us. Thank you very much for that, Lonnie.
Well,
And
just a word, and I'll tell you, part of the reason for that, Dr. M, is that I've always been very curious.
Mm,
And I can read a book, and a book creates as many questions as it answers.
mm,
And so I have always really appreciated it
mm,
when I could call up people and
Mm.
talk to them about things and clarify points,
mm,
because very often dialogue is much, much more effective
mm,
than reading something.
Mm.
And I called up Dr. Deming on more than one occasion,
mm,
and he spent whatever time it was with
Mm.
me. Dr. Deming, I mean, this is not
Mm.
some run-of-the-mill college professor or something.
mm,
One of the most brilliant men I've worked with forever was a guy named David Chambers, and he and Donald Wheeler taught statistical process control and other techniques at the University of Tennessee. And I'd get on the phone with David, and David would talk to me until all my questions were answered. And I always really appreciated that, and I considered it a great learning experience. And the bottom line is, a lot of other people have been very, very kind to me over the years,
Mm.
and they've helped me with that. And I appreciated that. And it's one of my ways of paying it forward to other people. One of the people I spoke to recently
uh-huh.
was Dr. Edward Deci.
Mm.
Now, Deci is like a world-class research psychologist.
Mm.
In the world of psychology, he's not quite a Maslow or a Hertzberg, but he's not very far from him.
Mm.
And I called him up at the University of Rochester, and I talked to him. And again, he answered all of my questions. He was incredibly patient.
Mm.
And some of those questions I referenced in my books that I've written. And so I find that people like that, I don't know, I just like to be around them. They're helpful, and they don't talk down to you. They meet you where you are,
Mm.
and they take you to a new place.
Mm.
And to be honest with you, I would like that someday I'm skilled at doing that for other people. And the only way you get skilled at it is you practice it. And plus, I enjoy taking some of these concepts that confuse people and simplify them. Lean manufacturing is really very simple. It's not a complicated topic.
Mm.
The complicated part about it is doing it,
Mm.
having the courage, having the character, having the energy,
Mm.
having the persistence, having to exhibit the willingness to fail and experiment and try,
Mm.
and then try again and try again.
Mm.
But it's not a technical challenge. It just isn't.
Mm.
And so I like to bring that across to people so that they're more willing to try and more willing to experiment. So all of it is I don't want to paint the picture that this is all about altruism. I get a lot from it too. And every time I talk to you, I learn some new and different things.
Me?
So
Well, I'm curious, so I keep asking, and I have certified. I mean, I have done that to you just yesterday, probably exactly 24 hours ago. Exactly 24 hours ago, I gave you a call, and you answered. Okay, so and I won't hesitate to call you up, because I know that
Please.
you would respect me, my curiosity, and you can tell me, hold on, but listen to this part also before, and then you explain to me. And that's what I like about it, that
yeah,
I never felt that, you were talking down on me or something to that effect. That's the reason that I'm very free with you. And then when I hear your voice again, when I hear your recording again, it reinforces. And if I have a question, then I call you back. Okay. Thanks a lot for
Sure.
being there for us, and me in specific, but for the Lean community. I'll take this forward, sir. And you got 16 more to come.
please do. Dr. M, like many people who are very good students, you're also a very good teacher. So thank you for that.
You are, I'm a good student because there's nothing to stop it from going straight in, right?
Okay.
Take care, sir.
Excuse me?
I said, take care, and I'm going to stop recording.
Okay.